For more on the diplomatic row between the US and Russia, Afzal Ashraf joins us now from London. He's a visiting fellow at the Conflict, Security and Terrorism Centre at the University of Nottingham. Mr. Ashraf, thank you very much for joining us on TRT World. Now, exactly where are we in terms of trying to get a peace process back in place in Syria?
In a word, stalled. There doesn't appear to be any initiative at the moment. There was a very promising agreement just a week ago, as you may recall, to try and get a aid corridor agreed. And that was an agreement between the US and Russia. It had an historic element, which was that on successful completion of that agreement, or that peace process, then US and Russia would set up a joint coordination center to coordinate their military operations, which is very important for effectiveness purposes, for security and safety purposes, and also for establishing the very necessary trust and confidence between the two countries as they work together to try and find a long-term solution in this conflict. But none of that is happening, and now we've got into a war of words that you've just described.
And Afzal, in light of what happened in the past week or so, that idea of a joint operations centre between the US and Russia seems fanciful now, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but you know, it's in military terms, it's a necessity because you cannot operate so close together with weapons and with aircraft flying around in very crowded skies without having some form of coordination. And if there is a conflict of any kind, one of the decisive factors in any conflict is command and coordination, joint efforts. But what we're seeing is parallel conflicts taking place, and indeed counterproductive efforts. So any gains that the Russians make or their supporters make are outdone by the gains that the US-backed rebels make, and vice versa.
And Afzal, what do you make of this latest call by the Russians for a 48-hour pause in fighting? They've tried to do this before. Surely that will just give the Assad forces and their supporters a chance to re-establish themselves in positions and prepare for the next offensive against the rebels.
Well, that is the problem, is that people think that you will gain a military advantage. And it's this priority that both sides are giving to military advantage over the humanitarian crisis that is causing the most distress, not just to the people involved, the children and the elderly and the innocents involved in this. And there are hundreds of thousands, millions suffering. But also to people on the outside. Yes, if there is an advantage to any side through a pause, through humanitarian aid, that, I'm afraid, has to be a price to pay. Why make innocent lives the price to pay for military advantage rather than relief, humanitarian relief? And this is one of the really difficult things about this conflict in particular, is that it's out of step with humanitarian thinking, out of step with the way that ordinary people think and believe and what they want, not just in Syria and Iraq, but also in the wider world. And this is one of the reasons why governments are not getting the support that they expect from their populations at home.
Okay, Afzal Ashraf from the University of Nottingham. I have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.